Have you ever wondered what happens when someone has everything, power, wealth, influence, but chooses the wrong path? What if a leader, instead of guiding his people toward goodness, leads them into destruction? Jehoram was born into privilege, the son of a righteous king, with every opportunity to follow God and leave a lasting legacy of faith. But instead of walking in the light, he chose the darkness. He allowed greed, fear, and evil influences to take root in his heart, and the result was devastating, not just for himself, but for an entire nation. His life is a tragic testament to what happens when we turn away from God and pursue our own selfish desires. But Jehoram's story isn't just about failure. It's about the unshakable justice of God. It's a story that calls us to examine our own hearts, our own choices, and where we are headed. Are we walking toward God's blessings, or are we straying into dangerous territory? Join us as we explore the rise and fall of King Jehoram, a story of power misused, warnings ignored, and a destiny sealed by rebellion. Through his life, we'll uncover powerful lessons about faith, obedience, and the importance of staying close to God, no matter the temptations of the world. Let's dive in. Jehoram was a man who had everything laid out for him. As the son of King Jehoshaphat, he was born into power, privilege, and the responsibility of leading God's people in Judah. His father was a good king who tried to follow the ways of the Lord. But when Jehoram took the throne, he chose a completely different path, one that led him straight into destruction. The first thing he did after becoming king was something unthinkable. He murdered all his own brothers. These were men who could have been his greatest allies, his family, his support system. But out of fear and greed for power, he wiped them out, ensuring that no one could challenge him. This act alone set the tone for his reign. Selfish, ruthless, and filled with evil. Jehoram had married Athaliah, the daughter of King Ahab and Queen Jezebel of Israel, two of the most wicked rulers in history. The combination of Jehoram and Athaliah was a recipe for disaster. Jehoram, though he came from a godly family, was insecure and easily swayed. Athaliah, on the other hand, was ruthless and cunning, raised by the wicked Ahab and Jezebel. When they married, their influence was toxic. Jehoram turned away from God, killed his own brothers to secure power, and led the people into idol worship. Athaliah's ambition only made things worse. Together, they brought chaos and destruction to Judah, nearly wiping out the royal family and plunging the kingdom into darkness. Their story shows how one bad partnership can ruin everything. Under their influence, he turned his back on God and led his people into idol worship. Instead of honoring the Lord like his ancestors, he built altars to false gods and encouraged Judah to follow in his footsteps. The nation that was supposed to belong to God was now drowning in sin. But choices have consequences, and God, who is patient and merciful, will not allow wickedness to go unchecked forever. Soon, trouble came knocking on Jehoram's door. The Edomites, who had been under Judah's rule for years, saw how weak his leadership was and rebelled, breaking free from his control. The city of Libnah also rose up against him. These weren't just political revolts. They were signs that God was removing his hand of blessing from Jehoram's rule. Then came a message that should have shaken him to his core, a letter from the prophet Elijah. Imagine receiving a direct warning from one of God's most powerful messengers. The letter told Jehoram exactly what would happen because of his sins. His family would suffer, his kingdom would be attacked, and he himself would face a painful and humiliating death. But even with this warning, Jehoram did not turn back to God. His heart was hardened. Not long after, foreign invaders, the Philistines and the Arabians, swept into Judah. They raided his palace, took away his treasures, and carried off his wives and children. Only one son, Ahaziah, was left to him. He had started his reign by killing his family, and now he had to watch as his remaining family was ripped away from him. But the worst was yet to come. Just as Elijah had prophesied, Jehoram was struck with a terrible disease in his intestines. For 2 whole years, he suffered in agony. His body wasted away, and in the end, his intestines literally fell out, a painful, drawn-out punishment for his wicked life. And when he finally died, there was no grand funeral, no mourning, no honor. The people were glad to see him go. He was buried, but not in the royal tombs, a final disgrace for a man who had brought nothing but trouble to his nation. Jehoram's story is more than just history. It's a warning. It shows us what happens when we turn away from God, chase after power, and live for ourselves instead of for Him. His life could have been different. He could have led Judah in righteousness, like his father before him. He could have left behind a legacy of faithfulness, but instead he left behind destruction and shame. God gives us all the freedom to choose, just like He gave Jehoram. But with those choices come consequences. Will we follow the path of selfishness and sin, like Jehoram, or will we choose to walk with God, even when it's hard? His story reminds us that no throne, no power, no earthly success is worth losing God's favor. In the end, the only thing that truly matters is where we stand with Him.